Stephanie, thank you so much for jumping on a call with us today, all the way from the Golan Heights. We are happy to have you. But before we get into any deep stuff, I just would ask you to kind of paint a picture for us of how you got there, how you ended up living and teaching and working in a war zone.
Wow, that's a 15, 20-year Jehovah's Sneaky story. But I think in the end, it was a bit like, I mean, I got out of college with a psych degree in 2008 thinking I'm going to go straight into grad school, teach and do research, and that's going to be my life. And just really felt the Lord be like, you can, but that's not my best for you.
Mm.
So then I had to kind of seek out that something else. And it was like finding the next breadcrumb on the trail and then the next breadcrumb and then taking these twists and turns that ultimately plopped me in the Middle East, which was not only not on my radar, but like not on my wish list at all, very much on my anti wish list. Um, but the nature, I think, of, I don't mean this to sound trite or like too like deliberately preachy or something, but I think the nature of obedience is all of a sudden the things that might have felt like a worst case scenario aren't quite as, like, if obedience leads you in that direction, it takes the edge off a little bit.
Mhm.
Mm.
And I made a lot of decisions kind of based on not wanting to regret not making that decision, if that makes
Mhm.
sense. So,
Mhm.
in the end, I got to northern Israel just before COVID hit. Like, I got to experience a little bit of normal, a little bit of quiet, and then we had COVID, and then I had a furlough during the, in the 2022 to 2023, there was a lot of civil unrest that I actually think COVID applied a lot of pressure on, civil unrest here in Israel. And then that kind of, um, I mean, October 7th was let's derail into a different direction, I guess. And so we've been at war since then. I've been back, since the end of 23. And, so I've seen pandemics, I've seen wars, I've seen a little bit of peace and calm.
Mm.
The Golan Heights, my neck of the woods up here is right up on kind of tucked in the corner where the Lebanese and Syrian borders meet. So it has been, I mean, I don't know when this will publish, but today is the 26th of May. So last night, the Israeli operations in Lebanon really, they said, we're going back in, like
Mhm.
whatever that means. I'm trying to, just for my own sake, stay off the news. And, I have scattered conversations with friends and neighbors about it, but it was rowdy last night.
Mhm.
Mm.
And, you know, far enough away that I slept just fine, but that was my lullaby, going to sleep with some booms in the distance and,
Wow.
aircraft and things going around. So,
Wow.
Stephanie, what would you say the distance is between where you are and um, that
um,
that
that's
skirmish there?
I'm, you know, 12 to 15 kilometers or more from the borders. And I don't know how far, like how deep in Lebanon, any of that
Yeah.
was going on. I know, it's May of 2026. So the
Mm.
IDF has been working on dismantling and dissolving the Hezbollah presence in southern Lebanon since October of 23. And then I can't remember when that ground op started in 24. That sounded like a movie outside. It was wild. We were all waiting for it, and there'd be these kind of scattered. They'd send in little raids or something to kind of, there'd be airstrikes or something. And then when the ground op started, I've lost track of time, but let's say something like 2 years ago, I remember talking to the Israeli guy that I work with here, Marco Moreno, and I was like, "Man, it's loud tonight." And he was like, I said, "What's going on?" He's like, "That's the ground up." I was like, "The that?" He goes, "Yeah, we started." I was like, "Oh my gosh!" I mean, it sounded like
Wow.
there's a scene at the end of, I think it's episode 2 in Band of Brothers, when Captain Winters is like he survived, they made it, they did the D-Day jump, and then he's a bit removed. They kind of they get their position, they get to camp or whatever, where all the soldiers are hanging out waiting to go inward, through France. And so he's kind of watching the front from a distance, and that kind of sound and stuff that's what it sounded like outside, which was pretty wild.
Wow.
Mm.
Wow. Yeah, that's not what we typically think about
Yeah.
We're I'm just imagining, thinking about serving there. I mean, God has an amazing way of moving us into the places we need to be, even when we, have no inkling that's going to happen. But, um, you know, when I'm thinking about the church in the United States and how far removed we are from that kind of thing, how much we value our comfort and our
Mm.
safety, all of those things. Um, that's not you're not living in that kind of environment. Can you help us um, understand, what how does that change your view of worship uh, I'll call it church. It's not, that's not the right term to use in your case, but what does it mean to be there in the midst of that?
Mm.
I think it's a huge honor. I do wanna give it, gonna sound unrelated, but I think appropriate shout yesterday was Memorial Day, and I think the reason that we are so far removed from it in the US is that we've had citizens that kind of secure our borders, w
Hmm.
but we have oceans on either side, so we don't feel it in our backyard. And I grew up in the military. My dad served, my uncles and cousins served, and um, I'm very grateful for that as an American. And
Yes.
as a as a disciple of Jesus, and I've been struck that often in the letters, the apostles refer to themselves as bondservants. The term disciple is much more liberally applied than we tend to use it in evangelical vernacular. So, if as a bondservant of Jesus, being over an environment like this, I think is I think they're in the same way that we would say, like, God funds what he ordains. If he calls you to
Yeah.
do something, he's
Yeah.
gonna make a way for you to do it. And in a similar way, if he calls you to do something, there's grace for it, you know? And
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
been in some weird environments. Israel is kind of my last station in the Middle East, so I've been in other countries. I had much more anxiety, and even if the village was a bit quieter at night. Um,
Mm.
but I love it here. It's a huge honor to be here, and I'll serve as well as I can for as long as I can.
Amazing.
Mm.
Wonderful. What, I mean, are there, does it take I mean, are there coping mechanisms? I mean, is it, my sense is that you're, I'm guessing there is a heightened awareness of God's, protection. Is that fair to say?
There's something in, like, retrospect. There was one time there's, like, a yard cat. I live in the country, so there's we just have cats. And there's this one window in the back of the house that I feed a cat through to just kind of encourage cat presence in the yard, to keep mice away, to keep snakes away, we've got these vipers up here that are pretty gnarly,
Ooh.
and we're not exactly down the road from a hospital, so and I remember making a run to go get cat food. Like, I'd gone grocery shopping, did all this stuff because the thing here, we have the Iron Dome. Israeli defense and intelligence is incredible and impressive. So
Mhm.
I'm very accustomed now to going out in public, and you see the reservists or the active duty. They always have their M16s with them because they have to, or a citizen, a civilian who has a Glock tucked in somewhere, and you just kind of go, okay, cool. Like,
Yeah.
you scan the room, you go, these guys. If something pops off, these guys have it. Get behind them, get out of the way. And we're like, where are the kids? You start doing, like, environmental situational awareness things in your mind that maybe you wouldn't do if you were in the States. I mean, I would argue in some ways I feel a little bit safer here than I would feel
In
elsewhere, but
Chicago. Yeah.
that's a you know,
I talk to my kids all the time about situational awareness. So,
yeah, I see some of the
yeah,
news headlines in the States, I'm like, "That would never happen here."
Yeah.
yeah.
So, um, despite all the, conspiratorial, anti-Semitic tropes that are circulating online now, but things just would not whatever. Places are what they are. But,
Mm.
I so anyway, the Iron Dome, the aerial defense will protect, uh, residential areas. But if you're out on the roads or something, it's you kind of pay attention to the emergency state. So you could, if you're in, like right now we're in green. I don't know if we'll stay in green. We might have been upgraded to yellow after last night, but again, I'm a little bit out of touch. Yellow's cautionary, obviously. Orange is like you need to be pretty close to your shelter, but you don't, you know, you can go outside. Red is like you don't have to be in your shelter, but any minute now we're going to tell you to get in your shelter, so you need to stay close.
Pretty close
So,
to it. Yeah.
um,
Hmm.
running errands, being out on the road, you don't get that same kind of alert system. So my friends and neighbors here have varying degrees of comfort with that. I have some neighbors that are like, it's like an extended hurricane party. You go get your supplies and you hunker down. And then I have other friends who are like, I was a kid in Lebanon 1, I served in Lebanon 2, and this is just another rodeo. Like, I'm going to live my life. What are the odds of, if it hits me on the road, it hits me on the road. It's just my time to go. And I'm like, yeah, but I have dogs I need to take care of. So being on the road is a little bit riskier, but I remember doing whatever errands, and then I realized, man, I don't have cat food. And I feel responsible for this cat because I'd rescued it from a village that got evacuated right after October 7th. And, it wasn't really fitting in with my village cats and whatever. I go up the road, like an 8-minute run to go get cat food. Make it back. And when I get back, that little shop that I ran up to get cat food was it didn't get directly hit, but a rocket fell right outside and like lit the field on fire. And that was the big issue we had out here in the country in 2024 were pasture fires because of Hezbollah just lighting them up.
Wow.
So, I have little moments or stories of like, in retrospect, that feels like in the moment I was like, oh, whew. And then later I was telling somebody that story and I was like, yeah, a rocket plays a pretty integral part of that story. That's probably not normal, but here we are,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
Incredible. I want to talk about Emmaus Table.
Mhm.
Stephanie, tell us a little more on that. I mean, that's a well, you intro us to that, and then talk about how that works in in this environment. I feel like Emmaus Table is a much slower, intentional kind of ministry, and
Mhm.
how's that playing out? Uh,
Well, the Emmaus Table is what in my mind, I frame it as a missional media production company. And
mhm.
so the target audience are people who are already confessing believers who want resources to strengthen and edify, equip, their local themselves or their local fellowship, their small groups, etc. And then we have an incredible translation team that helps pump these resources, video, written, I mean, whatever kind of media, Bible studies, films, documentaries, songs, the gamut, books, and they translate what they can into their language. So we have these resources available in dozens of languages, depending on the resource. And that we kind of do anywhere, with internet.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
That was the dream and assignment that became the Emmaus Table over 15 years. I think was the thing that's how the Lord baited me with the breadcrumbs through the Middle East, but principally because he'd given me this vision for a film project called Covenant and Controversy to take the issue and theology of Israel to the Western Church to clarify our idea of God. I was really provoked by A.W. Tozer's thesis in The Knowledge of the Holy that what comes into your mind when you think about God is the most important thing about you. And he said, if you think something about God, you call it God, but it is not true of God. You're entertaining idolatry or you're fashioning heresy. So it's very important that we understand God as he has revealed himself. And he's revealed himself as the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He has said Jerusalem is his namesake. It's for his glory. And he's, anchored all of these things there and tethered all these things there that are for our good, for my good as a 110% American Gentile. And that locked me up with a team that was starting an organization called Frontier Alliance International. And for a time, we tethered film production and started building out the media outfit. And that was FAI Studios.
Hmm.
And then right around the time of the October 7th war starting, we went through some reconfiguration, we'll say, in FAI and permanently relieved our founder of affiliation and duty with the organization. And at that point, it felt really irresponsible. Those of us who were left holding FAI Studios, it just felt like we don't want to continue to carry this and this name and this enterprise, but we have all of these platform assets, you could say. And we have a mutual friend, Jeff Henderson, and I had asked him like, can this be done in a clean way, or do platforms just corrupt people? Because we were seeing all these scandals with all these different leaders, and
Mhm.
um, not just what we were facing as an organization. And he, in a very Jeff way, he said, tear down the platform and use the wood to build a dinner table. And that was, 2023. We're having that conversation, and then as we were navigating and wading through, what do we do now with this? Do we close it down? Do we repurpose it? And um, repurposing it with the vision of that table value of getting people around. Reggie Kelly calls it the uncommon things in common.
Mhm.
So our core emphases or core convictions at the Emmaus Table are the preeminence of Jesus, the return of Jesus, or what the prophets called the day of the Lord, um, the covenantal centrality of Jerusalem, prioritizing a proclamation of the gospel of the kingdom, and especially doing so to the Muslim world, because I think I've spent, I can't do math on the spot, but it's more than 15 years, under 20 years in the Middle East and Muslim world. And
Hmm.
Um, what I've found is that people who um, are uninformed, maybe, on the covenantal centrality of Jerusalem,
Mhm.
or you could say biblically illiterate, like illiterate in the prophets, for whatever reason, if they then go to the Muslim world and they don't have a backbone of conviction on what the Lord says about, like, why is the Middle East the way that it is? All these things that you could trace back to the torn sons of Abraham that are now manifesting in all these different wars and regional conflicts. Um, what we see is they end up adopting Arab animosity against Israel. Or you could be so pro-Israel and so like carnally Zionist that you adopt Israeli offense at the Arabs, or you just really start to hate the Muzzies, and you just foster all this animosity in either direction. And the cross doesn't allow us to do that. And I think in the end, at the end of the day, the Lord is going to hold the Christian body accountable in a way that he will not hold Israel accountable, or he will not hold the secular Westerners accountable. But we're being confronted with the issue of Islam, even in America, all throughout the West. And we have a responsibility to take the gospel of the kingdom to the enemies of Israel, principally the Muslim world, the
Hmm.
sons of Ishmael, the sons of Esau, and to do so faithfully, bearing, what John Harrigan calls that cruciform witness. Um, and so we want to build a body of resources at the Emmaus Table that helps people do that. It's myself, Gabe Caligiuri, Joel Richardson, John Harrigan, Bill Schofield, Stephen Holmes. We've got the First Fruits of Zion guys throwing in on it. Um, Nick, our brother Nikolai, our Bulgarian brother, who's like a poetic prophet who's so surgical and precise, but really embodies the heart of Scripture, and some others. So having that collaborative feel at the table is something that I really value, and also having when we first rolled it, that kind of did our when we flipped the switch and moved over to the Emmaus Table, some of the first comments we started getting online were people who were like, "Well, wait a minute, this guy's saying this, but Joel always says it this way," and da da da. We were like, yeah, but if you had a whole dinner table and you go, okay, we have these uncommon things in common. I don't think they should be uncommon, but here are our core convictions. Here are the main and plain. We all agree on these things. And then you talk through it, you find out that that guy reads that page this way. This guy sees this shade of blue. And, I've never heard it put that way, but here's what I bring to
Yeah.
the table. I love that. And
Yeah.
I think it's, maybe a little unconventional, but I really appreciate I love the vibe. So
Mm.
we have
Awesome.
all of our resources at the amazetable.world, and then we also have them in an app. So the app kind of consolidates, the website, the written material, the YouTube channel, streaming, the Spotify profile, everything is in the app. But then they're on different platforms. YouTube lets us load in 4K, so the visual quality is a little bit better on YouTube. But our tour de force right now is our Covenant and Controversy film, The Great Rain. So
Awesome.
Yeah. It's for our listeners, it's like an entire ecosystem, right, of biblical theology and just the heart of God. Going back to something that you said that the temptation, if you're not firm on the cross, the temptation is to go to either extreme on the Israel issue and your attitude towards Arabs or Muslims. And then the other way, you called it carnal Zionists, maybe. Is that what you said? So you said that the cross doesn't allow us to do that. And so I'm wondering if you could unpack that a little bit. How is the centrality of the cross keep you sort of anchored in day to day, not just personal life, but like your ministry life, where it is war is polarizing. And I would say a lot of times the American church can be polarizing. So yeah, I mean, I don't know, just unpack that a little bit. How does the cross remain central to you, and what about its centrality is inviting to the people around you?
I mean, I hope, let me say as a disclaimer, I hope the cross is central in my life, and I
Yeah.
want to live in fidelity to Jesus. There's a story of uh, Duncan Campbell as he was arriving in the Hebrides Islands at the start of what became the Hebrides revival, and the pastor and an elder from the local church came to greet him. He had to take the ferry from mainland Scotland, go out into the island, and there'd been all this kind of hype. There was a real heightened sense of anticipation, and they felt like God was doing something, and that He was bringing Duncan Campbell. So they could have been like, "Hey, man, let's get rolling." But before he even got off the dock, the elder said to him, "Mr. Campbell, do you?" He asked him something like, he said, "Mr. Campbell, are you right with God?" And Duncan Campbell said, "I'm comfortable saying that I fear God," and that I'm reminded of that now. I feel I fear the Lord, and I want to honor the Lord. I am sure I do it imperfectly, and I just want to be clear if anybody listening to this podcast who's like, "Oh my gosh, she like lives in a war zone. She must be she's like a real Christian." I'm probably a bit of a doofus in ways that you would not anticipate. Not probably, I am. So magnificently uncool. Um, and I think this is true for anybody in a war zone or in I took a holiday up to the UK to kind of get some R&R, and a friend of mine has this gorgeous, like she and her family just took over an old farm that they've got to get back in working order and stuff. Like it's so peaceful there. There's a train that goes by that I'm like, that sounds like artillery, and it's not. It's like normal people hear a train when they hear a train. So in whatever environment, the cross is the cross. It's the great equalizer in the gospel, and that Billy Graham "come as you are" thing.
Mhm.
So you have James saying, I think it's James, he said, where like envy and self-seeking exist, every evil thing is there. It's just a petri dish for wickedness.
Mm.
And the cross, or you could say the like living by the Sermon on the Mount. I think the ethics of the cross or the ethics of the kingdom are the sanitizer to keep that petri dish clean. And um,
Yeah, that's good. That's
so
good.
there's the if you call your brother an idiot, you're nurturing the seed of murder in your heart.
Mm.
I mean, I have Hezbollah over the hill, and I'm like, I do think they're idiots. And I think they probably are pretty well described by what Proverbs calls fools.
Mm.
And I'm not
And
allowed to go petition the maker of their souls and be like, I don't like these guys. And he's like,
right.
so does that mean, and this is again, like wars and national securities, governments have certain responsibilities, but I am not in government. I have the gospel of the kingdom, and it is my um, honor, privilege, and responsibility to bear witness of Christ
Mm-hmm.
crucified to all men everywhere. And what if the Lord puts somebody in front of you who, in my neck of the woods might be somebody who's an ideological jihadi, or you're at a supermarket in the States and you run into somebody with blue hair who doesn't know what gender they are and they think that you're a bigot and this, that, and the other. Like, can you love that person well enough to serve them with the gospel of the kingdom and maybe a cup of cold water and some food? Or are
Mm.
you so identified by your cultural club that you just get tribal about it? and the cross doesn't allow us to be tribal.
Mm,
It's the great equalizer.
mm. Good
That is good.
word. Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking too that um, war seems also an equalizer as well. That it
Mm,
really forces you to um, know who you are and what your faith is about. Uh, I don't know.
yeah, you could
It's
say
just a
that.
thought. I One of the things that you said also, I think you were quoting Jeff Henderson. Um,
I'm often stealing
yeah,
stuff.
he's such a man. He's such a quotable guy. He said, "Tear down the platform and use the wood to rebuild a table."
Mm,
And in some ways, like I guess I'll take some license here just to use that as a metaphor for this conversation in a war zone
mm,
where things are being torn down, platforms are being torn down, ideologies are being torn down, some are being lifted up. But like, what does God call us to do in a war zone?
mm,
And it's all about repurposing, right? It is, and a lot of what I'm hearing you say is these pivots that have come through COVID and war is God's using it to repurpose things that you um, have always had there, but he's repurposing, he's reshaping it to bless. Um, so anyway, I thank you for sharing your story, and we have some more questions for you, but just inspired and really thankful that God has you where He wants you, and He
Mhm.
has He knows how to get people where He wants them. So
Yeah.
that he
um,
does.
yeah, yeah. So
This has been so good, Stephanie, in so many ways. It's amazing how you've answered things. One of the things I wanted to ask is,
mm,
what do you want to say to the Western church? And I think you've been doing that, but I want to give you one more shot at that in these days, what's we've been talking about centrality of the cross, the recognition of, the place of God's people in in the plan. What do you want to say to the Western church right now?
Keep a tender heart. I think, I've never been someone that would be like, I think we're going to see the return of Jesus in my lifetime. But then I read the news and I'm like, I don't know, man. I'm starting to get old.
Hard
And
not to think. Yeah.
there was a report I
mm,
woke up to it this morning, so I'm not sure when it was published, but it was in the Jerusalem Post that, and I was running around. So I saw it. I've not read it. I don't know the nuances. I don't know who leaked the report or who's saying what, but it's a pretty remarkable headline that the US and Israel are, w moving to had so right now, uh, Israel has security authority over the Temple Mount, and Jordan has religious authority. The Kingdom of Jordan has religious authority. So the Al-Aqsa Mosque, the Dome of the Rock, um, the limitations on who can go and when they can go and what you have to wear when you go and whether or not Jews can go and if Jews can go, who are like how stringent it has to be. And so if Jordan is released from religious authority over the Temple Mount and Israel regains religious authority over the Temple Mount for the first time since, you know, the days of the apostles, that would be pretty remarkable and sobering. And I feel like, when I would read something like Matthew 24 before even before COVID, I'd go, wow, that sounds like a very
mm,
dynamic movie that Jerry Bruckheimer would have a good time with. Reading it now in 2026, especially in the uh, I think verse 9 is, he "What's it gonna look like when you come?" And he goes, "Well, first of all, make sure nobody deceives you." Then he says there's wars, rumors of wars, pestilence, famines, earthquakes in weird places, da 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 da. And then he says, um, "And you will be hated by all for my name's sake." And scripturally, all through the prophets, his namesake is anchored in Jerusalem. That's a word association in scripture.
Mhm.
So, maybe I'm taking liberties here, but I think the issue of Jerusalem being pressed upon the nations in the way that it is now, that is dividing the church, or whether or not we're the kind of Christians that are Christian Zionists or we're the kind of Christians who don't believe Zion matters anymore. It's like this like happy-go-lucky warm feeling on your insides, whatever. Then he says, "You be hated by all for my name's sake." And then there's fracture in the body, there's betrayal in relationships, families are disintegrating, and and then there's this great falling away. And I think, there's these huge, big cosmic issues and the controversy of Zion and wars and, financial pressures and like whatever. Um, but how easy is it for people to get offended nowadays? When
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
first read Matthew 24 all those years ago, we didn't have smartphones, we didn't have social media, we didn't have hashtags, we didn't have podcasters, and now the like ideas just have they just run like brush fire through people's brains. And
Right.
I think if you I we're vulnerable. So I'd say keep a tender heart, guard your mind, guard your heart, keep it
Mm-hmm.
be very difficult to offend, and prioritize the testimony of scripture, the message of the prophets and the apostles, prioritize that over and above anything you read online. And I say this as somebody with an online resource library. Like I have a podcast. We're
Yeah.
on a podcast right now.
Yeah.
Uh, get in the word, keep a tender heart.
Awesome. Great word. That is such a good word for this day. Stephanie, this has been awesome. Thank you for
Yeah.
what
Thank
you're
you so much.
doing. Thank you for being with us, and we just bless you and the work that's happening there, and keep it up. And uh, we encourage our Go listeners to take a look at emmaustable.world.
The Emmaus Table world. Yeah.
The Emmaus Table.
The Emmaus
Thank
Table.
you.
I just wanted to make it as long and complicated or type.
Hey, that's all right.
Great. Well,
Yeah.
God bless you,
Thank
Stephanie.
you.
We thank you. We love you, and keep up what you're doing.
No, appreciate it. Appreciate you
All
guys.
right. All right.
Thanks, Stephanie.
Yeah. Thanks so much.